Welcome to this month's Corentus First Friday with a thought leader. My name is Janice Kaye, and I am excited to be with you all today, and I'm excited to bring our thought leader forward for you today. So we are here because we are part of a community. We are part of a global community of professionals advancing team effectiveness. And here are some of the organizations in which people come to us from. So it brings me great joy and pleasure to bring to you our thought leader, Sheila Heen. So Sheila is a best-selling author and founder of the Triad Consulting Group and a professor of Harvard Law School. She's the deputy director of the Harvard Negotiation Project, where she spent 30 years specializing in high-stakes negotiations where emotions and relationships are at the center. Sheila works with executive teams and organizations worldwide, helping leaders navigate conflict, strengthen collaboration, and make better decisions together. She is truly one of us. She's the co-author of acclaimed books, to which I love, Difficult Conversations and Thanks for the Feedback. And her work has been featured on Oprah, NPR, Fox News, and CNBC. But before I bring Sheila on to share with you, I have to share with you one thing. So I asked Claude AI, which is like a form of ChatGPT, how many books are there about how to give feedback as opposed to how to receive feedback? And this is what it said. There's a striking imbalance. Based on my research, the business world has spent billions of dollars and millions of hours teaching people on how to give feedback, including hundreds of books. By contrast, there appears to be one prominent book specifically about receiving feedback, and that's Thanks for the Feedback, The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well by Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen. So Sheila, my first question to you is, how did you and Doug come up with the insight on how to write a book on receiving feedback as opposed to giving feedback?
Gosh. Can you send me that answer? Actually, I want to send it. I want to send it to Doug because it will make him laugh as well. And really, Doug gets the credit here. How did we get there? I mean, we got there, I'm sure, having all the same conversations that you guys have with clients, which is that Difficult Conversations came out in 1999, and I spent the next 2 decades helping leaders with their toughest conversations. And the first thing that we always do is ask a group, well, what are your difficult conversations? What do you want help with? And we make a list together. And over the years, Doug and I noticed that feedback was always on that list, 100% of the time. And so our first reaction was to do what I think we all do, which is to help people give feedback more skillfully and more clearly and more often. And, there's a lot that can be improved in people's skill and thoughtfulness in offering someone else feedback. But the problem was that when we would come back a month or 6 months later and say, so how are those feedback conversations going? People would be like, yeah, not so good. Like I tried it, they still didn't take it. Like I decided it wasn't worth the effort, because it's a lot of investment and thoughtfulness sometimes that goes into giving feedback, particularly when your sense is that it won't be well received. And so Doug and I were sort of puzzling over this question, like, what are we missing here? What might be more helpful? And it was Doug who one day said to me, well, hang on a sec. In any exchange of feedback between a giver and a receiver, it's really the receiver who's in charge, because it's the receiver who decides what to let in and what sense to make of it and whether and how they decide to change. So maybe we've been going about this totally backwards. Like maybe the real juice here is in understanding why it's so challenging for all of us as humans to take in other people's unsolicited, often, tips and suggestions and complaints and requests for personality changes. And informal and informal, spoken and unspoken, like other people's reactions to us. And I don't think that's easy for anybody. And I don't know that anybody has asked that question before. And that's what really launched us on this quest, just to understand what are the patterns in how human beings react to feedback, and what could we better understand about our triggered reactions, because maybe that's a whole independent skill set for leaders in particular. And if you get better at receiving, you will also automatically become a better giver, because you can anticipate the reaction on the other side and invite someone into a richer two-way conversation, partly because usually if I have feedback for you, you also have feedback for me, weirdly. We each think the other person needs to change. So many of those conversations become a mix of I'm a giver and a receiver at the same time. And we're both unpacking what's going on between us. And so that's really what led us down that path, which has just been such a refreshing place with a fresher perspective for me, to notice what's going on with me, and also to notice the ways in which I had the same reactions as many other people, and I have some different reactions. Doug and I are actually, we talk a little bit about sensitivity to feedback, because we stumbled on some evidence suggesting that sensitivity, meaning how to negative feedback, how upset do you get and how long does it take you to recover, or how long does positive feedback stick with you emotionally? The individual sensitivity can vary by up to 3,000%. And of course, it depends on the feedback. This is simplistic in some ways. Depends on who it's from and what it's about and how important it is. That's always true. But I also would say generally, there are differences in sensitivity, and Doug tends to be highly sensitive, and I tend to be much more even keel and maybe a little bit undersensitive sometimes. And that actually made us a really interesting pair, to work on the book together to try to give a cohesive picture. Doug would also say, the last thing I'll add is Doug would say, he sometimes gets asked, how do I know if I'm sensitive or not? And his answer is, if you don't know, you're not. Because it's not a mystery if you're at the really highly sensitive end. Yeah.
So with that, if you wish to share now, Sheila.
Yeah. I will. So let me share my screen. So one of the things that has been helpful to me is actually this slide, is to understand that receiving feedback, at the heart of it is a dilemma that isn't going to go away, because there are sort of two core human needs that are sitting in tension with each other. And on the one hand, we actually do want to learn and grow. And if you look at the happiness research, learning, growing, getting better at things, achieving mastery, like it's a big piece of what makes life satisfying. And so according to that, we should always be eager for feedback. And yet that's not how I actually feel, at least 50% of the time. And it's because you bump into this second core human need, which is the need to be accepted and respected and maybe loved the way I am now. And the very fact that someone has feedback for me suggests that how I am now is not okay with them, and they just want a few upgrades. And so I actually think there's no way to make the learning process painless. And the other thing but this helps me understand my conflicted relationship with the feedback I get, and also the fact that in the moment, feedback can be among the most painful things in our lives. And then fast forward, however long we want to talk about, 5 hours or 5 years, and looking back, we think, thank goodness that happened, because it got my attention in a new way, or I learned something about myself that wasn't easy, but was actually quite important and changed something fundamental. And so there's something about the human learning system that actually means there isn't a pain-free learning system. If there was, this book would be even more popular, I'm telling you. For sure. We would all be selling that in a heartbeat. The other thing that I thought might be helpful just to put on the table, and some of you are probably familiar with this idea. So we throw around this word feedback, but what's been helpful to me is to understand that there are actually 3 different types of feedback, and they have very different purposes. And we actually need all 3 kinds in order to learn and grow. And the easy way to remember these is ACE, although we have a little bit of an allergy to acronyms because they're so often very forced in leadership spaces, etc. And so we now teach this using the acronym ACE, but we did not even include it in the book. So because we were like, we don't need an acronym for this. Now I think we should have used an acronym for it. Anyway, 3 different types of feedback, really different purposes. The A, as you can see, is appreciation. Just as I see you, I get you, you matter, etc. Of course, we all know appreciation plays a huge role in motivation, in engagement scores, etc. In people feeling seen and that their hard work is noticed and valued is huge. It's a big piece of the Gallup Q12. Also, if you have a shortage of appreciation, it will definitely get in the way of my willingness to hear the C, which is coaching. Because if the first thing you have to say to me after all this time is something you want me to change, like, seriously, screw you. Do you understand how hard I'm working and all the things that I'm doing well? Coaching is a little bit of a term of art these days for an elicitive way to help someone learn, and that's included here. But by coaching, we also mean the bigger category. If it is intended to help you be more effective, efficient, skillful, knowledgeable, whatever it would be, it counts as coaching. So it could take the form of correction or role modeling or whatever. So coaching is obviously the engine for learning for all of us individually as well as for organizations. But then the C bumps into the E, because E is evaluation. And evaluation rates or ranks you. It tells you how you're doing, whether you are on track, how you line up against expectations. So there's a relationship between each of these. And by the way, I should specify that evaluation is not negative while appreciation is positive. There is appreciation that is also positive evaluation, like this is the best first Friday we've had all year. Just planting that idea. And appreciation sometimes doubles as positive evaluation, but there's also appreciation that is just pure appreciation. Like if I have a team member who sends me something on a Sunday night, I'll sometimes just shoot them back a note that says, hey, thank you for this. I suspect it cost you part of your weekend. I'm looking forward to reading it. So it's super clear. I don't know if it's any good or not, but I just want you to know I notice what this cost you. And that is valuable to me. Evaluation tends to be, of course, the most emotionally volatile. We have the biggest reaction to feeling judged. And often we intend to be coaching, but people hear evaluation. Like I offer my kids tons of coaching. And by the way, as I say to them, like other people pay a lot of money for coaching like this, like you are getting it for free. I don't know why they sometimes hear it as me saying they don't measure up, right? So as humans, we can hear evaluation even when someone is trying to coach. So being clear about these, both what we're asking for and what we think we're offering is a first step. So I thought we could just play with this for a couple more minutes and just do a self-assessment. If I'm saying that over time we need all 3 types in order to learn and grow, and that organizations and teams need to provide all 3 types in order for them to learn and grow, it's worth just pausing periodically to do a quick, you can call it a temp check, or a signal strength check. And so I want to invite each of you to think of a relationship that's important to you. So you have to think of a context. And that could be a relationship with a particular person, or it could be, with my team. And just to answer for yourself as a receiver, how much appreciation do you feel like you're getting right now? The scale is 1 to 4, like signal strength. So a 1 would be a very weak signal, and a 4 would be a very clear and consistent signal. How much appreciation do you feel like you're getting? How much coaching do you feel like you're getting? And how clear are you on where you stand and how you're doing? And I've just put in examples here of answers to that, but I want to actually encourage people to write it down for themselves on a scrap of paper nearby. My son, my eldest, is getting married in December, and the context that just jumped to mind for me is my relationship with my soon-to-be daughter-in-law. And I have a really wonderful mother-in-law. She lives with us actually these days. And so I have said to my daughter-in-law, her name is Darcy, I hope I can be as good a mother-in-law as my mother-in-law is to me, but like I don't really know how to be a mother-in-law, so I'm figuring this out. So it's interesting that that's what just jumped to mind for me. I do think she appreciates me. That's pretty clear, and she's been very skillful at saying that. I don't feel like I'm getting much coaching from her on what could be better, And so I think I'm doing okay, but I would probably give the evaluation like a 2 right now. And it's a tricky time as the mother of the groom, not a groom, the groom, could be a groom. I'm trying to do that dance of like not interfering, etc. So it's interesting to do a snapshot in time. It will change a month from now, and then to talk about it. So what we have each just done with some context in mind is a self-evaluation. We rated or ranked what we're getting compared to some standard in our heads of what we would like. The next step would be to do a little bit of self-coaching, given your answers. What type of feedback would you love to get a little bit more of? And how might you ask for it? And who might you ask? So in other words, I can ask Darcy, but I also might ask my son, right? Like, do you have a sense of what I'm doing that she may hesitate to tell me, or whatever it would be? Because I won't be offended, but I don't want to put her on the spot. So I'm super curious for people to drop into the chat. What type of feedback would you like more of in the relationship you're thinking of? I also, by the way, particularly want to appreciate the people who are saying that they want more appreciation. I actually think that it can be hard to say you want more appreciation because you don't want to feel needy or something. But when I'm working with a team, I take it as a sign of health when people feel comfortable saying, I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm having a rough week. If there's anything I'm doing right, now would be a good time to mention it. That I actually think that is a sign of a pretty open and healthy environment to feel comfortable saying that. I also think that people feel appreciated in very different ways. And that's sometimes worth talking about on a team. Some people really want to hear the words. Other people are like, I don't care. Often people who say, I don't care about appreciation, what they mean is, I don't care about the words. They make me feel awkward or on the spot. But there's something that tells them whether they're appreciated or not. What are they listening for? I know for me, it's like when people come to me with their toughest problems, I know they value what I have to say. So I feel appreciated simply by that act. I think it's a little bit like that languages of love idea in the workplace. It's interesting. We see some coaching here. Coaching is the one that leaders in particular will say they're shortest on, because of course people are hesitating to offer them candid coaching sometimes. Or people don't know what they would like coaching for. So helping them know how to ask for it can be helpful. And then that question about evaluation, how am I doing? Like, am I on track? Is this what you expected? Especially when roles are changing or fluid, it can be a super helpful thing. Is this what you expected? Are there things I'm doing or not doing that we'd love to see more of, etc.? But you would ask for each of these different types in different ways, and sharing responsibility yourself for getting the kind of feedback that you need over time rather than other people having to guess is a big piece of what we teach leaders and clients to do. So with all that in mind, I'm going to pause. I'm super curious to hear people's questions, reactions, thoughts about this.
There's a question from Janice, Sheila, which is there an assumption that these are being given and received one-on-one and not in groups or teams?
Great question. There's not necessarily an assumption. Well, let me be more clear. Other people often assume that. I do
Yeah.
not necessarily assume that.
Yeah.
And I think my understanding is that this is something that you guys work on as well.
Yep.
Um, and in particular, if the conversation is a team conversation about, hey, what's working, or calling out specific things. First of all, appreciation is almost always well received. So doing that publicly or passing it on can be super powerful. And so in a public forum or to someone saying, hey, by the way, I checked in with so and so yesterday and heard how much they are loving this thing that you're doing that to someone as a third party gives it credibility because the person isn't trying to butter them up. I'm just repeating to you what I hear you're doing really well. And you
Mm.
can do that privately or you can do it publicly. And talking as a team, I see so many teams where you've got a super innovative, hard driving leader who just is always pushing people for more excellence or more innovation or whatever the more is. And what's missing is any kind of celebration.
Yeah.
So people feel like it's never enough. We never pause to celebrate. Appreciation is easier than coaching, public coaching. And I think in particular, if it's, hey, where do we stand on this? What help do you need? Are there things that are in the way? That's a super helpful conversation to have inside a team as a check-in and a two-way discussion of what would help or what's missing or what the holdup is, as well as then creating accountability. But it's accountability in the context of joint contribution, a la the way we talk about it in difficult conversations, not blame,
Right.
but whatever the percentages are, we all are contributing to this not moving forward or moving forward. And so let's unpack what's going on and what would help it move, for instance.
Yeah. Thank you.
What do you think? I'm interested in what other people think about this. How you think about what would you put in a group forum and what would you put in an individual forum? Especially around coaching, which I think is the most challenging one.
I think that many leaders that I have the opportunity to observe do not do this modeling this way by in a visible public way as we just heard to very specifically lift up certain behaviors, habits, or practices in an appreciative way. I think it's incredibly not just motivating for the person, but it's really helpful for culture shaping. It's an underutilized tool, I think sometimes. That's all I said.
Thank you.
That feels right to me, Tosca. And a team that has psychological safety, where we trust each other that the intent here is to make us better, the intent here is to name and explore what is working or not working, rather than calling someone out. Sorry, I have a dog that needs to go outside. But rather than calling someone out and feeling publicly blamed, that is a sign of a team that is not ready for what you guys are helping them do. But how do you think about that, Tosca?
I don't know that I have additional thoughts to that. I'm curious what others are thinking in terms of the relationship between what you've been talking about and culture.
Yeah.
The visible part is really, really important, right? For that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I have a thought that I'd love to throw into the mix, which is you mentioned psychological safety.
Hmm.
I think that is a very big idea. And having read so much of Amy Edmondson's work on
Hmm.
it,
Yep.
both her academic papers and her books, you know, really creating psychological safety, it's a big thing. And the idea that I can say what I need to say, be authentic, give voice to who I am without fear of shame, blame, or recrimination, etc. If you really have that, then ACE starts to become more feasible. Because I think to your earlier question, evaluation is the most tricky in groups.
Hmm.
Very, very
Yes.
tricky.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And I would also say that the question of how do you initiate that to build psychological safety has a lot to do with so part of psychological safety is trust. Trust that our intent is positive, even if I don't say it or do it exactly right. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or blame you. I want to actually open a conversation that would benefit from input from others so that there's a purpose for it being multilateral, as we would say in negotiation. Um, and so often you can do that by being explicit about intention. Hey, I want to put something on the table. I want to put it there because I'm not sure we have made the right call in
Mm.
dumping this in your lap or whatever it would be. Or maybe we haven't been very clear about what we're expecting, et cetera. And so I'm curious about your experience with it, the role that you're playing. I'm curious about where other people are noticing us bumping into each other. So I'm very clear what my purpose is in naming this, and saying, I think it's not working as well as we meant it to yet. Um, and that can help build psychological safety because I'm being quite explicit in those entree um, ways to introduce the conversation. Kim, I'm super curious. I'm going to let a dog back in. I'm sorry, my dogs cannot decide where they want to be.
No problem. It took me a while to figure out how to raise a hand on an iPhone, so I apologize for this. I'm doing a little bit of a rewind here to your question, or it may have been Alexander's question around the feedback, whether it's individual or in a group, and having that psychological safety component. The thing that comes up for me is because I do a lot of group facilitation, and it's when it happens in a group, it should be addressed in the group.
Mhm.
And because it's impacting the whole group, because there's a ripple effect that happens. And it's kind of like when we see mom and dad fight, then they go away and then they make up and we never see the makeup part. And so there's a piece for me that's really important in the work that I do around that. And going back to that piece, it's like we have to have that safety. But so I'm just kind of curious your thoughts and reactions on that of the group versus the individual.
Well, and what you've just made me think about, well, two things. One is, I don't know if any of you ever did a session with Chris Argyris. Chris Argyris was at the business school. Amy Edmondson is one of his um, acolytes and expert in her own right, as is Diana McLean Smith and Bob Putnam. But what was really interesting to me about being in a workshop with Chris is that I don't think he would call it calling people out, but it certainly was experienced as being called out in a workshop group for what you just did and how you just interacted and what you overlooked, etc. And talking with other people in the workshop as participants, and I was a participant, it made attending incredibly anxiety producing. Even though we knew he had good intentions, we were worried about looking as incompetent as we are now discovering we are in front of everyone else, right? And and I don't even know what I was supposed to say, so I'm not only incompetent at what I was supposed to say, but I'm incompetent at understanding what I did wrong or whatever, what opportunity I missed. So, Kim, what part of what you just made me think about is the distinction between I feel trusted and respected generally in my role in this team. And now I feel like I've got a foundation to look at a moment in time or a one issue or a place where I missed the boat. And so it's more isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the whole story about me, which is sometimes when we get feedback, it gets supersized and it's like the whole story about me. I've never done anything right in my whole life. And so how do we create a situation where we hold each other, we know that we respect each other and that we're really good at what we each do, and that normally we collaborate really well together. And then it feels very low stakes to hone in on something that isn't working right now, or that I'm trying to do something new and I don't think I'm good at this. We all know I was good at that. I don't think I'm necessarily yet good at this, or know what we're doing or where we're going here. And that's okay because I feel held in the larger story of our respect for each other. And so, Kim, I like your observation that if it's affecting all of us, that's a natural place to unpack it. And I think that's a learning curve and a relationship curve, relationship development curve as you're bringing new people onto a team that has that as the norm. It's going to take them a little bit of time to get their feet on the ground.
Yeah, and I use that a lot with the psychological safety of like the level of trust, like how up that trust ladder are we going to be able to get there? And to the other point you said that I just have to say I use all the time, which I love, is your 3 triggers of the relation trigger, truth trigger, and identity trigger, like home run in illustrating that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, by the way, I'll just show this last slide, which is this is often a conversation that we have in teams. How do we invite and provide meaningful feedback to each other? How do we weave it into everyday life so it's not about having more 30-minute meetings? And let's think about it both formally and informally. So that conversation itself can set us up to have more open conversations with clarity there. The 3 triggers, I think, which are people's triggered reactions to feedback, truth triggers, relationship triggers, like who's giving me the feedback, and then identity triggers, what does it say about me and who I am, have really been helpful to me also. And what we tend to tell leaders is the fastest way to become to change your feedback culture generally is for you as a leader to become a better receiver, because you're going to model and name, I'm having a reaction. That's not the end of the story. I'm probably just not understanding it yet. And it also communicates and role models what you expect from everybody else as well.
I would love to hear, and the dialogue up to date where I really got keenly appreciative is around the idea of the setup before, the culture. What have you created in terms of culture? Where I tend to go is with the feeling as an indicator of my thought. So if I'm feeling like, oh my God, here's the evaluation. Now, what is it in me that is being disrupted? Well, it's a thought generating that feeling and that loop, right? And then as the person going to give the feedback, you pretty much have done your work if you've already cultivated that awareness.
Yeah.
Because then it's a matter of, so tell me what you're thinking. Oh yeah, I think I kind of messed up here, or I think I could have done and focused in this area more highly, that kind of thing, where they're literally confessing and working it out through sort of that coaching process.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm tracking, but I'd love an example of how you would begin naming the feeling or the thought.
Yeah. So let's say there's that fear, right? Like in Chris's class where you felt like, oh my God, not only am I being called out and I'm being exposed, so there's a fear. And what's driving that fear is a thought of maybe I'm not as hot as I think I am, and now people are going to know that.
Yeah.
And we all do that. And then, but once you understand that that's just something common to all of us, for me, it lowers my temperature, and it takes away a lot of that meaning that I'm ascribing to that story I'm telling myself, that now everybody's going to see how really ignorant I am, and walk down that line. I just go, hey, you know what? I'm just being real. I can lean on, what success I've already had. If I can learn a little bit here. So what it does is it takes ego out of the room for me. But it needs to be established up front, because you can't expect people to jump in that. So that's the sort of that watering or gardening of the leader part of people. If you go into feedback as the manager, and I'm making that distinction, right? Managing things, leading people. Then you're going, it's coming out as, I'm not getting the results. We're way behind on this. But if I go in as a leader, I'm helping you. And I've cultivated that caring relationship. I care about you. And I have faults too, because I've been vulnerable as a leader. So it's that blend. And I think everybody here understands that. I just am fascinated by this whole subject, and then how that really can help us all become, more efficient and effective of growing leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, I find for myself, it's taken me a while to better understand the impact hierarchy has on these conversations. So when I am the most senior person in the room, for me to initiate something that is coaching or evaluation is like, there's like a megaphone attached to whatever it is that I say in this way that I don't feel, right? It's invisible to me in many ways, but super visible to everybody else. And also that I need to be listening for indirect feedback more carefully, because people are going to be more careful with me. They're going to say things like, Janice does it this way. And I'm like, good for Janice. So what? Particularly because I'm undersensitive, I may not hear it. I may miss that they're trying to give me feedback. And so thinking about, how do I level the playing field a little bit, either that I'm not the right person to name this or inquire about it, to invite that conversation, or I want to be inviting feedback from others regularly, so that it's very clear that I expect that they have feedback for me, and I have some advice for you for how to give it to me, so that I can hear it, because I do want it. Yeah. One of the entry phrases that we suggest is trying to improve the way leaders ask for feedback, because the natural way that people ask, of course, is just like, hey, do you have any feedback for me? I'm super curious, right? And we're genuine with that question, but it's a super hard question for people to answer. They're like, are you fishing for appreciation?
Right.
Do you really want coaching? How honest should I be? Yeah, it's putting people in a tough position, actually. The phrase that we suggest instead is, what's one thing? So if you're looking for coaching in particular as a leader, candid coaching, you can finish that sentence any way it's appropriate for the context, but what's one thing that if I could change it, you think would make a difference for you? What's one thing we could change about our morning meeting that you think would make it more effective? What's one thing that I'm doing, or maybe it's something I'm failing to do, that you think is getting in the way here? And it's not, is there anything? Because if you say, is there anything, they'll be like, no, you're amazing, right? But it's amazing how fast people have an answer to that question. It's an exercise that we often do.
I love
in
that.
workshops is that I send them off. I say, okay, we're going to take a 20-minute break. During that break, you have to call someone in your life and you need to ask them, what's one thing? And you have to have it as a phone call, not a text, because it really needs to be a dialogue so that you can ask questions just to understand what they're saying, etc. And people look at me like, you're joking, right? And I say, I know it feels very anxiety producing. And then I give them a couple examples. We had one woman who came back and she said, well, first I called my dad. I didn't like what he said. So then I called a colleague and they pretty much said the same thing. So yeah, I think I have to pay attention now.
Nice.
So they come back from these conversations like super jazzed. Like I just dropped into somebody's life. They had an answer, or they didn't have an immediate answer, but now they're texting me. And
That's
I warn
really
them
cool.
like you have to think about how do you want to process and think about that? You're not required to take it, but you do need to close the conversation. So go back to them afterwards, say, hey, I'm super curious. I really appreciated your candor. Here's what I'm thinking. I have a couple follow-up questions, whatever it would be. And also they may send you, I had one colleague whose dad had something for him immediately. And then the next morning he gets an email from his dad with like 7 more things that he thought of overnight. So you can't say like, sorry, you used up your one thing. Stop is closed. Um, but asking what's one thing is something you can integrate just into like walking down the hall after the meeting. It doesn't have to be a big meeting. You're trying to make it super low stakes and you're really clear that what you're looking for is coaching and change.
Nice. Thank you for all that.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
We're all on this journey together, man.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
That's right. So there are a lot of practitioners of team engagement, team coaching, team facilitation, etc., in this room. So curious on your thoughts in terms of bringing this into a team norm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are organizational cultures which are hard to establish. It's a larger system.
Mhm.
A leader can establish transparently a team culture, a team norm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of it is explicit. So that question, how do we invite feedback from each other as well as to us, the senior team or as a function team, whatever it would be? And how do we provide all 3 kinds of feedback to others and to each other is a conversation that you can have with each other. The other explicit thing that we sometimes do, and we do this with team members, and then we also do it when you onboard someone into a team. We have a template that we call how to get the best out of me, or getting the best out of me. And it's just a collection of questions that we invite people to reflect on, jot down a few notes about. And the easiest first question is, what are my pet peeves about feedback? Because everybody has pet peeves about feedback. And that's a fun, low stakes question to start with. And then there are other questions like, what makes you feel appreciated? If you feel triggered or defensive, how will we know? And what advice do you have for someone else when you're in that place? What can we do that will help? So I'll give a couple of examples for myself. One of my pet peeves is when someone drops me a note and just says, like, do you have time to talk? You know, the end of the day, tomorrow, Monday, whatever. And they don't tell me what the issue is. I'm just like, okay, you just ruined my weekend because I am going to imagine the worst possible thing. So I'm like, just give me the headline so I know how bad it is or how good it is or whatever, what to worry about. One of the things I've said to my team members is when I get defensive or uncomfortable and feel on the spot, often I'll make a joke. And I worry sometimes that it's going to come off like I'm dismissing what you're saying, but it's actually a signal that I'm really hearing what you're saying. And I probably just need a little bit of space to process it. And then I promise I will circle back to you. So I'm not actually intending to be dismissive, but it's a sign that you're hitting home a little bit. And that's been really helpful, right? And it makes it discussable. So that when I do make a joke, I notice it more quickly and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. Damn it, another learning opportunity. Give me a little time to think about this and I'll come back to you. So that you're building that culture by making all of these things explicitly discussable.
Quick question about the best out of me. So
Yeah.
what I see happen frequently with onboarding a new team member is that team member shares about themselves with the rest of the team, but they don't typically get other team members maybe best of me template. So do you encourage sort of that sharing both ways, which might be, a lot, so that, person onboarding, you have perhaps 10 other, best out of me templates from your, colleagues to look at. But I think that's incredibly helpful. What's your take on that?
It can be helpful, and different teams have done it in different ways. I think just thinking about adapting this to their context. So one thing that we do recommend is that when you're onboarding someone new, that sitting down to have this conversation one-on-one with the person responsible for their evaluation, let's say the team lead, or CEO or whoever it is, that because feedback is not a meeting, it's a relationship. That relationship is going to be the one that they are automatically attending to the most. And that person is the person they need to understand the most. How do they offer them feedback? Like if I'm the team leader, I want them to understand that I want it. About when I joke, I'm not being dismissive. It's all that stuff. So having that as a deeper conversation with the team lead, I think actually is more important or most important for them to start to feel comfortable. And sometimes it's too overwhelming because they're trying to learn names. I, I'm learning your names and your neuroses all at once. It's a little much. But I actually think people have done it like, hey, every week we share an answer to one of these questions. And that way they slowly get to know each other and we have a chance to revisit. Or once a month, we do a quick check-in on how are you doing on the ACE front? What could you use more of? And they start to learn and get in the groove in a way that's like 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting. That is at a regular cadence, and they start to get to know their colleagues.
Thank you.
Mm.
So on behalf of all of us at Corentus and practitioners, everyone here, the entire community, thank you, Sheila, for spending an hour on Friday with us and a number of other conversations we had prior, which was so lovely and such an honor to meet you and to meet you face to face. And may that happen again when I'm in Cambridge again. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for inviting me. We are just so in this together in trying to both support leaders and be leaders and take feedback ourselves from the people around us. And so I knew that I would be held in a space that was caring among companions on this journey.
Thank you all. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye all.
Wonderful weekend.
Thanks, Sheila.